believe that this is obviously a very, very isolated sort of incident. And it was there in full view of all of the cameras.
A Detroit bus driver and her supervisor left a running city bus for a romantic rendezvous, leaving riders stuck and frustrated.
In May of 2025, surveillance cameras inside a Detroit city bus captured something that would spark outrage across the entire city. The footage showed the two engaging in intimate physical contact while on duty, fondling each other inside the bus meant to serve Detroit's most vulnerable residents. But that wasn't even the worst part. Before we dive into the shocking details captured on those bus cameras, let me take you back to how this entire scandal unraveled. And trust me, the most disturbing revelations are still ahead.
That supervisor and employee were having what it called romantic interactions both on the city bus and during working hours. But the even bigger problem, according to this report, is what happened after that relationship was discovered.
Detroit has always struggled with public transportation.
I really hope they don't do that, because I have to get from East Jefferson all the way to Wayne State, so that'd kind of be hard to do without the bus.
But what makes this case particularly heartbreaking is that roughly 1/3 of Detroit residents don't own cars. These are people who depend entirely on buses to get to work, to medical appointments, to pick up their children from school. When a bus doesn't show up, it's not just an inconvenience, it means missed paychecks, untreated illnesses, and children waiting alone in the cold. This is the backdrop against which Andre Reese and Dana Ruff's actions would play out, making their betrayal of public trust all the more devastating. Andre Reese had been working for the Detroit Department of Transportation since 2006, nearly 20 years of service that should have taught him the weight of his responsibilities.
The bus is moving. I mean, we're getting down. I used to ride the bus as a kid.
Same here.
You know, my mother didn't drive.
Exactly.
She was a Detroit school teacher. And the bus transit got her to work on time, and she was able to put food on the table.
His job as a senior transportation service inspector wasn't just a title. He was responsible for overseeing bus operations, responding to accidents and incidents, managing broken down buses, and most importantly, supervising bus drivers to ensure they stayed on schedule and kept passengers safe. In his own words during an interview with investigators, Reese described his position as basically DDOT police without the badge. That kind of authority comes with expectations, and those expectations were about to be shattered in the most public way possible. Dana Ruff joined the department much more recently, starting her role as a bus driver in May of 2024. Before working for DDOT, she had bounced around various service jobs, including positions at Motor City Casino and a Burger King franchise. She had even earned a medical assistant certification back in 2008, graduating with Dean's List honors from Everest College. By all accounts, she seemed like someone trying to build a stable career in public service. But within a year of joining DDOT, she would find herself at the center of a scandal that would make headlines across Detroit and beyond. The problem started almost immediately. Andre Reese was Dana Ruff's direct supervisor, which meant he had authority over her work assignments, her performance evaluations, and potentially her continued employment. When the two began a romantic relationship, they were required by city policy to disclose it immediately. City Executive Order 2012-1 specifically mandates that any romantic connection between a supervisor and subordinate must be reported to prevent conflicts of interest. But Reese and Ruff never filed the proper paperwork. When they finally submitted a fraternization disclosure form months later, on July 28, 2025, it was incomplete, with the human resources sections left entirely blank. No conflict assessment was ever conducted, and neither of them was reassigned to eliminate the obvious power imbalance. But the failure to disclose their relationship was just the beginning. What they did while on duty would prove far more damaging to the people of Detroit who depended on their professionalism. It started on May 6, 2025. Surveillance cameras inside bus number 1716 captured Andre Reese and Dana Ruff engaging in intimate physical contact, fondling each other while the bus was supposed to be in service. After their intimate encounter, Reese did something that would become a pattern in in his behavior. He reported a mechanical defect with the bus, claiming there was some kind of problem that required taking it out of service. But here's the thing, there was no audible alarm on the surveillance footage. No mechanic ever verified any actual problem, and the bus continued running perfectly fine after he filed the false report. Instead of addressing a real mechanical issue, Reese took Dana Ruff on an unauthorized detour to a fast food restaurant, using city time and city resources for their personal enjoyment. The consequences of this single incident were staggering. That bus sat idle for 115 minutes, nearly 2 hours of wasted fuel, wasted city resources, and most importantly, passengers left waiting at bus stops who had no idea why their ride never came.
A Detroit bus driver and her supervisor left a running city bus for a romantic rendezvous, leaving riders stuck and frustrated. This was just one of the issues uncovered in a new report from the Detroit Inspector General. The report says the two were caught being romantic during work hours multiple times, causing long delays.
115 minutes might not sound like much, but imagine you're standing at a bus stop in Detroit waiting to get to work. You've got bills to pay, a boss who won't accept excuses, and no other way to get there. Every minute that passes is another dollar potentially lost from your paycheck, another step closer to being fired. That's the real human cost of what Andre Reese and Dana Ruff did that day.
I think it's unfair to the people that's catching the bus. I have to get from East Jefferson all the way to Wayne State, so that'd kind of be hard to do without the bus.
It will affect us a lot because people can't go to school. Like parents want their kids to go to school, and this is the only transportation we do got.
But they weren't done yet. Not even close. 2 weeks later, on May 20th, 2025, the pair met up multiple times during Dana Ruff's assigned route. This time, they took their recklessness to an entirely new level. Video surveillance captured them abandoning a running city bus, leaving it completely unattended for approximately 40 minutes while they continued their romantic rendezvous. Dana Ruff had left her assignment without even requesting relief, which is standard procedure when a driver needs to step away. She just walked off the bus and left it running. At least one passenger noticed something was wrong. A customer assistance form was filed that same day, complaint number 14,249, submitted by a customer service representative named LaTanya Copeland. The complaint specifically noted the abandoned running bus, documenting that riders were left stranded and confused about why their bus was sitting there empty. The weather that day wasn't freezing, with temperatures hovering around 63 degrees Fahrenheit with light rain and mist, but that didn't make the situation any less infuriating for people who needed reliable transportation. Rain might not be snow, but standing in wet weather waiting for a bus that's been abandoned is still miserable, disrespectful, and a complete betrayal of the trust Detroit residents placed in their public servants. During video footage from that day, investigators captured audio of Dana Ruff claiming the bus had mechanical problems, telling Reese about a stop engine light and saying the bus had cut off on her twice. But Andre Reese's response was telling. He said, "It ain't cut off on you," essentially calling out her lie right there on camera, before adding, "It's all right, even if you were faking, you're with me."
For some reason, this individual only chose to review the footage basically from outside of the bus, not the full interaction.
That one sentence tells you everything you need to know about how Andre Reese viewed his authority. He believed that his position as a supervisor made him untouchable, that he could excuse any behavior, fabricate any story, and face no consequences because of who he was. That arrogance would eventually be his downfall. The misconduct didn't stop in May. On July 7th, 2025, after Dana Ruff finished her shift, she approached Andre Reese's white city vehicle, touched something in her bus windshield, then climbed into the back seat of his car. The vehicle drove off with both of them inside and returned 20 minutes later. Then on July 16th, the violations became even more brazen. Video footage captured Dana Ruff using her cell phone while actively driving the bus, a direct safety violation according to the 2023 DDOT Employee Handbook. Cell phone use while operating a bus puts every single passenger at risk, not to mention other vehicles on the road and pedestrians. But that wasn't even the most reckless thing she did that day. During her route, Ruff once again abandoned the bus, this time for 16 minutes, telling passengers she was going to get a drink while carrying her purse. The surveillance footage caught her meeting up with Andre Reese again, and the audio captured a flirtatious exchange where she told him, "You bad," followed by laughter as Reese walked away. Meanwhile, at least one passenger approached the bus during her absence, likely wondering where the driver had gone and when they might actually get to their destination. All of these incidents were documented on video and were violations of multiple policies, including dereliction of duty, insubordination, unauthorized use of city resources, and indecent acts on department property. According to the 2008 DDOT Employee Handbook, these were classified as Class 4 offenses, the most serious category, which normally mandates a 30-day suspension pending discharge, meaning termination. The policy is clear, the violations were clear, and the evidence was overwhelming.
It started with an anonymous complaint back in June alleging that a senior transportation service inspector, Andre Reese, and bus driver Dana Ruff engaged in indecent activity on a city bus. An investigation by the Office of Inspector General uncovered video footage from May 6th showing the two fondling each other on a bus. It found Reese then reported an unsubstantiated mechanical issue with the bus, took the bus out of commission, and took Ruff to a fast food restaurant, disrupting service for 115 minutes. On May 20th, it says Reese and Ruff again met up multiple times during Ruff's route and at one point abandoned the bus while it was still running. That day, DDOT received a complaint via a customer assistance form about the abandoned bus, but Inspector General Kamal Marable says leadership didn't investigate it properly.
So what happened when DDOT supervisors finally had to address this misconduct?
We found out that the supervisors who were responsible for dealing with this type of issue were very lenient in their response to it.
DDOT Superintendent Howard Bragg III was responsible for reviewing the evidence and determining appropriate discipline. He had access to all the surveillance footage, all the customer complaints, all the documentation showing exactly what Andre Reese and Dana Ruff had done. But here's what he did instead. Bragg classified their actions as Class 4 offenses, acknowledging the severity, but then gave both of them only 5-day suspensions. The DDOT Safety Department had already weighed in with their recommendation. Chief Safety Officer Corey Holmes submitted a video review report on May 30th, 2025, recommending 30-day suspensions with potential termination for both Reese and Ruff. That was the appropriate penalty under the handbook, the punishment that matched the severity of their violations. But Superintendent Bragg ignored that recommendation entirely. And here's where it gets even more suspicious. An anonymous complaint sent to the city alleged that Bragg and Reese were personal friends, that their friendship might have influenced the lenient treatment, and that this whole situation might have been covered up if not for that initial anonymous tip.
Assistant Director Andre Mallet also failed in his responsibilities. Even after additional video evidence emerged showing the July incidents, even after it became crystal clear that the initial 5-day suspensions were completely inadequate, Mallet did nothing to correct the situation. He approved the lenient penalties and moved on as if nothing serious had happened. On June 4th, 2025, someone who had seen enough decided to act. An anonymous email was sent to multiple city agencies, including the Office of Inspector General, detailing the indecent activity on the city bus, the abandonment of running vehicles, the undisclosed romantic relationship, and the suspiciously lenient discipline that followed. The email specifically questioned whether there was a cover-up happening because of the friendship between Superintendent Bragg and Inspector Reese. That single email would trigger an investigation that would expose not just individual misconduct, but systemic failures throughout DDOT's entire disciplinary process.
Yeah, that's right, Kimberly. The Office of Inspector General found that supervisor and employee were having what it called romantic interactions both on the city bus and during working hours. But the even bigger problem, according to this report, is what happened after that relationship was discovered.
The Detroit Office of Inspector General launched an investigation on June 11, 2025. Over the following months, investigators conducted extensive interviews with everyone involved. They spoke with Andre Reese and Dana Ruff on August 7th. They interviewed Superintendent Bragg and Assistant Director Mallett. They reviewed every frame of surveillance footage. They examined GPS data from city vehicles. They collected customer assistance forms in internal DDOT documents. The investigation was thorough, methodical, and damning. On August 7th, during his interview with investigators, Andre Reese admitted to the interactions, but tried to justify them, claiming the mechanical issues were legitimate, even though no mechanic ever verified any problems and the buses continued operating normally. Dana Ruff gave similar testimony, sticking to the story about mechanical defects that the evidence clearly showed were fabricated. When given the opportunity to respond to a draft of the investigators' report in October, neither Reese nor Ruff submitted any response. They had no defense because there was no defense to give. Superintendent Bragg and Assistant Director Mallett did respond, and their answers were revealing. Both submitted nearly identical written responses on October 31, 2025, defending their decision to issue only 5-day suspensions. They claimed they had consulted with human resources. They argued that the full surveillance footage wasn't available to them at the time, even though investigators later confirmed it was accessible if they had bothered to request it. And they insisted that reissuing harsher discipline after the fact would be unfair to the employees. The Office of Inspector General rejected every single one of these arguments, noting that the supervisors had failed to conduct thorough investigations, had not held any hearings to consider mitigating circumstances, and had applied discipline in a way that was inconsistent and situationally subjective rather than following clear policy guidelines. The final report was released on December 22, 2025, and it pulled no punches. The Office of Inspector General substantiated every major allegation: dereliction of duty, insubordination, unauthorized use of city resources, indecent acts on department property, and violations of fraternization policies. But the report went further, recommending discipline not just for Reese and Ruff, but also for Superintendent Bragg and Assistant Director Mallett for their failures in investigating and enforcing proper accountability. The Inspector General also recommended sweeping policy reforms, including mandatory evidence checklists for all investigations, enhanced training for leadership on disciplinary procedures, strict enforcement of fraternization disclosure requirements with actual consequences for non-compliance, and oversight mechanisms to ensure discipline is applied consistently and proportionally across all employees. Inspector General Kamau Murabe put it perfectly when he said,
"The real victims in this were the citizens who were waiting on buses that did not come on time because you had individuals who did not take their job and their responsibility seriously."
The public reaction when the story broke in early January 2026 was swift and angry. Social media posts showed Detroit residents sharing the news with comments ranging from outrage to dark humor. People demanded that both Reese and Ruff be fired immediately. Some pointed out the gender bias in media coverage, noting that Dana Ruff's photo was widely circulated while Andre Reese's image was nowhere to be found, despite him being the supervisor who held more power in the relationship. Others dug into Ruff's personal history, finding references to a 2013 appearance on the Steve Wilkos show involving a DNA and lie detector test, though those details had nothing to do with her professional misconduct and felt more like piling on than legitimate criticism. DDOT Executive Director Robert Kramer issued a statement acknowledging the findings and committing to implement the Inspector General's recommendations. He emphasized that fairness and thoroughness in the disciplinary process is critically important and promised that DDOT would ensure employee disciplinary actions aligned with city human resource standards going forward.
The department was given until January 23, 2026 to submit a formal response outlining exactly how they would address each recommendation. As of mid-February 2026, no public updates have been released about whether additional discipline was imposed on any of the 4 people involved or what specific policy changes have been implemented. This case also fits into a disturbing pattern we've seen in public transit agencies across the country. Similar incidents have occurred occurred at the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York, where a supervisor and subordinate were caught having a romantic rendezvous during work hours. Community Transit in Washington dealt with a bus driver caught having sex on the job. Metrolinx in Ontario had to address 5 bus drivers who were initially fired for sexual harassment but later reinstated after arbitration. These cases share common threads: supervisor-subordinate power dynamics that enable misconduct, inadequate oversight mechanisms, inconsistent disciplinary responses, and ultimately, the people who suffer most are the riders who depend on reliable public transportation. As this case moves forward, Detroit residents deserve answers. They deserve to know what additional discipline, if any, has been imposed on Andre Reese, Dana Ruff, Howard Bragg, and Andre Mallet.
The Office of the Inspector General is now recommending discipline for Bragg and the DDOT Assistant Director, additional consequences for Reese and Ruff, as well as policy reform and enhanced training for DDOT leadership.
They deserve to see concrete policy changes implemented with real oversight to ensure they're being followed. They deserve leadership at DDOT that takes their responsibility seriously and understands that every decision they make affects thousands of people who have no other options for getting around their city. Most importantly, they deserve a public transit system they can actually rely on, where buses show up when they're supposed to, where drivers and supervisors put passenger safety and service above their personal desires, and where accountability isn't just a word in a handbook, but an actual practice enforced consistently and fairly.
DDOT Reimagined is going to look at the service that we have, and it's going to say, this is the service that's required, and then we have to find the resources to expand.
What do you think about this case? Do you think they should be fired? Let me know what you think in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you the next one.